Welcome to the DevSecOps Bunch, May edition. This is our fifth in a series of webinars this year with experts in the DevSecOps world. I'm super excited to have Eran Kinsbruner with us from Perfecto. And we're going to talk today about powering DevSecOps CI/CD pipelines, make them successful using continuous testing. Now, Eran, would you like to introduce yourself and your company briefly, please?
Of course, Brian, thank you for having me again. Excited to be in this webinar. And as you mentioned, we have done a webinar last year about the 3 C's, CI/CD, CD. So this is kind of taking last year's webinar to the next level. I'm excited to be here. I work in Perfecto as a Senior Director and Chief Evangelist. I'm also an author of 3 books. A few of them, or one of them at least, will be given as a giveaway at the end of this webinar. One of the other books that I authored was actually partnering with you, Brian. So again, I'm always excited to work with you and try to provide some best practices to the market.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us. And I'm Brian Reed. I'm the Chief Mobility Officer, talking head, and many other things here at NowSecure. I work a lot with our customers on mobile strategy, from building fast pipelines and innovative software to making sure security and privacy are built in. So I'm pleased to have Eran joining us today. So a couple of quick reminders. So the Q&A is open. Please ask questions as you go. We will answer those questions at the end. Second reminder is, yes, you will get the slides and you will get the recording a couple days after today's session. So listen along, take notes if you want, but you'll have both of those things for reference later. We're also going to include reference documentation at the end, so we've got a lot of links to learn more about today's topic and other related concepts at the end. And we're going to have a big giveaway with prizes at the end. So Eran and I are going to ask you quiz questions about something we talked about today. I'll give you a brief hint that it has to do with numbers and statistics and percentages, so you'll want to take note of a few of those as we go. So our agenda is really, we're going to dig inside where we stand with mobile and mobile performance from both a security and a functionality perspective. Deep dive right into continuous testing, walk you through some key takeaways as well. So we appreciate you joining us on our journey today. So a little bit about NowSecure. If you're not familiar with us, we invented modern mobile pen testing, mobile forensics, and in fact, the first mobile application security testing workstation toolkit in history. We've been working with OWASP and a number of standards bodies for years, helping create the original OWASP Mobile Top 10, which was the split from the OWASP Web Group, along with many other things. If you're deep into security, then you might be familiar with Freedom Radare, the cool guys Zula and Pancake who created those open source tools, work for NowSecure today. We work with lots and lots and lots of organizations like many of you joining us today, big and small, across lots of different industries, raising the bar on application security to help you speed your pipeline. And with that, Eran, would you like to introduce Perfecto to the crowd?
Of course. So Perfecto is a digital quality platform. It's fully SaaS, cloud-based, that allows customers to have a one-stop shop for continuous testing of mobile, native, hybrid web, and also desktop web applications. We have a cloud of real devices, virtual devices, as well as desktop browsers on which you can create, execute, and analyze all of your testing activities. We support frameworks from Appium, Selenium, XCY-Test, Espresso, WebDriver.io. We also have scriptless testing for web and mobile. And we have a unified reporting platform that can allow you to analyze everything that you have executed. So this is a word about Perfecto.
So thank you again for joining us. We have a lot of customers who use NowSecure and Perfecto together in their mobile pipelines, and that's why you see us in the marketplace and partnering with customers a lot. So we're going to do 2 polls to get started. If you're a frequent attendee, you know the polls are to understand who's here and help Eran and I steer our conversation today. So first poll is live. What is your role? We expect, and from the registrations, we have people with lots of different experiences here. You may come from QA and functional testing. You may come from security. You may be a DevOps engineer. You might be a developer. We appreciate you joining us today. We're about 20 seconds in, and we have about half the people voted, so we'll leave it open for a few more seconds. So we really would encourage and entice all of you to participate. I don't know if it helps you with the odds of winning the prizes at the end, but it certainly helps you with appreciating the value of the conversation. So taking a look at kind of where we are, it looks like about a third of the folks are from QA, about 29% of the folks are from security. So we'll kind of call it even. Great that we have some developers and DevOps engineers here. And whoever you are is another thank you for joining as well. And so as a result of the understanding who's here, we also kind of want to understand what tools you use in testing. So whether you're on the functional testing side or you're on the integration testing, or you're on the security side with things like SAST and DAST or SCA, maybe you're doing manual testing, be it on the security or the functional side. Can you also please answer this poll as well? Again, we appreciate you filling this out. This will help Eran and I kind of speak to what we expect to be a wide variety of tools, because as a general rule these days, to deliver high quality mobile software, it does take a village, both of people and tools, in order to make it work. And the tooling gives us the automation and the speed and the velocity and the consistency and the predictability. And then you have the experts who are doing the deep dive complicated things and writing really cool code. All right, so looks like we're about half have voted. So functional and integration testing is about half of the people here. We've got about a third of the people who are using some combination of SAST and DAST. Manual pen testing is a big winner. There's still a lot of that going on out there. We find a lot of companies are combining automation and manual testing. So we look forward to showing you what you can do with continuous security testing here today. And so with those two polls, it's time to move on. You know, if we look at what's really going on in the marketplace now, about 70% of all digital time is actually spent on mobile apps, not web apps. And if you think about that in the world, organizations have invested potentially millions of dollars in web testing for functional and security, but a lot of organizations are kind of behind on investing in mobile security and functional testing. And the stats really kind of show that. So we've been benchmarking, for example, mobile app security risks in the public app stores, right? There's almost 6 million apps in iTunes and Google Play. When you pull down millions of those apps and analyze them for 4 years running since I've been in this job, 85% of all apps have security flaws. Now, if you're a security analyst on the call, that means it violates one or more of the OWASP mobile top 10. And 70% leak CCPA and GDPR. So those stats are pretty bad. Now, Eran, on the automation side of the house, it's pretty rough as well, right?
Oh, yeah. And I think that the two stats that you see on the screen, actually, one causes the other. You know, if only 9% of the organizations can automate about 75 or more of the test cases, it means that 90% or so are really automating too less of their test scenarios, which leads to a lot of manual testing, sometimes not testing enough and producing escape defects in the app stores. Some of them are security, some of them are functional, some are both. But obviously, when you don't have enough automation, it leads to the other stuff that only 14% can really release software daily. You cannot release without high degree of continuous testing and test automation. So obviously, there needs to be a better way, a more intelligent way to strategize around continuous testing, so you see a bit higher numbers on the automation front, as well as the release cadence and velocity.
Absolutely. And as we'd said earlier, we did this topic last year, and sadly, these numbers haven't moved. So the industry benchmark data shows, statistically that we're still trying to figure it out. So let's talk about continuous testing, and would encourage you to think differently from how you might be doing testing in your organization. And so this kind of is almost an orthogonal mind flip in order to think about the model here. And so we're going to talk about it using kind of a standard pipeline diagram. If you've been in our other DevSecOps bunch sessions, you've seen this picture. Everybody's got something like this, requirements and design, you write some code, you commit the code, you build the mobile binary, you test it. You've got this rinse and repeat cycle where you're trying to get good speed and velocity. Eventually, you're ready for going live. So you're going to stage it and then push it into production, right? And from a deployed perspective. And so this is very classic, whatever you call your stages, this is kind of what everybody does. And so what we want to kind of talk about today is the testing phase. And what we're going to talk about is how testing can be integrated throughout, not just at the end, and how this notion of continuous testing actually drives acceleration. So Eran, why don't you talk to us about the pipeline performance challenges here?
Okay, awesome. Maybe you just control the slide. It will be probably
I'll
say
do it.
Zoom is weird today. So to the point, I've just emphasized what is continuous testing. So now when you think about what I've just said earlier, and you put it into a pipeline, recurring, by the way, this is, I hope you can understand, this is kind of a continuous thing. This is a loop, and it needs to be automated as much as possible. But when you do the proper requirement and design activities, adding new functionality into Jira user stories, and you can really apply the quality mindset into these phases, from the requirement design throughout the code, committed code, pull request, and all this kind of stuff up until the build acceptance testing. And I've seen in the previous poll that many of you are doing functional and integration testing. These are the massive test automation suites that actually run in the middle of this pipeline. You are doing a lot of unit and static code analysis and SAST and DAST activities earlier on the left hand. But as you move towards the build process, this is where you're starting to pile up more test executions from different types: security, functionality, integration, accessibility, and so on and so forth. Obviously, when you shift a bit more to the right, you need to care about the user experience. And we are living now in the mobile world. This is all about mobile. And think about the complexity of mobile with different operating systems and different devices and form factors and custom OS versions across different global countries, and the implications of network and security, etc. So this is where, I've just built for you a test plan or a quality mindset or continuous testing mindset that starts earlier in the coding phases up until the right. And once it's being maintained and runs continuously with full automation or maximum automation, this is where you actually can see the value. Unfortunately, and you see the title of this slide, we have a problem. It's about how can you automate as much as possible of everything that I've just talked about.
And so as we kind of roll forward, right? So we have this challenge, right? So we want to write a lot of code, but we also want to write quality code. And somehow we have to blend speed and depth together. And I think the key point that Eran and I are making here is that in the old world is around depth. Did I test every pixel? Do I have a line of code testing for every single thing we write? Functional, integration, security, user, or what have you. In this world, it's changing it on its ear and saying, I want to automate as much as I can for speed and get as much coverage as I can for speed and put that speed in different places in the cycle. And if I have a high risk, high value application, I want to automate as much as I possibly can through continuous testing. And then for the really arcane or challenging parts, you can still have the humans do a little bit of work at the end. So instead of the humans doing all the work and slowing it all down, you've got automation doing 80 or 90% of the work and human experts where necessary doing the other work. For a lot of our customers, it's just continuous testing and there is no human level effort. It all depends on the type of application risk and scenario. And so as we move into speed, it's about thinking differently. It's not about how do I get perfect test coverage. It's about how do I optimize for speed as much as I can that I can test every build, every time, every day to meet some minimum bar of quality. And my strategy ought to be set a minimum bar, make sure it runs continuously, get it stable and reliable, continue to move that minimum bar up if you need to get additional functionality or security coverage. And so it's a think differently mode. Move from the depth rules to the speed rules, and that will help you accelerate. And that's really how these case studies we're going to talk about at the end are pulling this off. And so there's really two parts to this, right? You have the quality of the security, i.e. no security bugs, and you have the quality of the functionality. So I'll hit the AppSec testing piece and then hand it off to Eran. So it is possible today for mobile to automate 80 to 90% of a security test. Now, I'm not going to call it an automated pen test. I'm going to call it automated security that meets the bar so you don't show up in my 85% of an apps violate the OWASP top 10. You can actually automate the OWASP top 10 or most of it. You can't automate the full OWASP MASBS if you know it, but wouldn't it be great if you could do 80% of that in an automated fashion and then your experts only have to do a little bit? Now, what this means is you're plugging automation directly into your CI/CD and ticketing systems, and so it basically runs autonomously in the background. You may be doing source code testing in SCA, and that's great. With SCA, you want to make sure the code coming in is clean for any third-party libraries and open source and all the rest. But you really ought to be testing the binary. Why test the binary? Because that's what actually runs on the device. And we all know that what the hackers can get to and the bad user experience comes from what runs on the device, not what some system says the thing kind of looks like when you look at the source code. And running that on a real device, at least from a security perspective, is better than an emulator, because that really allows you to understand how the app is interacting with the device. You can use emulation if you want. You'll find you're still leaving coverage gaps. And it is possible to run these on real devices and always leverage standards, right? At a minimum, be leveraging OWASP. If you're in the federal world or selling to federal, look at NIAP. Use CVSS scoring and things like that to help people understand relative risk level and all the rest. And so we'll show you a little bit about how to actually make this run in a few minutes. But think about operating this way. Wouldn't it be great if you're a security person or a developer or a DevOps person, if 80 to 90% of security testing could happen autonomously in the background with no one lifting a finger? Well, that's basically what we're talking about here. Configure it and just let it run. And so with that, I'm going to pass it to Eran to talk about the functional testing side of this.
Definitely. Thanks, Brian. This is great. And, you showed the earlier slide about the old world and the new one. So, and you talked about speed or velocity, which are the same, are driven by automation. To move from the old world to the new one, you need automation. You need automation that works. You need automation that is split across the different types of testing. And you guys online mentioned, right, you're doing functional and integration and security and performance and user experience and interoperability, which are all relevant in the mobile space. So you need to make sure that you are baking into each and every step of your pipeline the right test cases. And oh, by the way, since we are focused on mobile changes every month, right? We are now aware of the iOS 14.6. 14.6 is in beta already, or release candidate already. So it means that a GA of this version is coming in the next few days. You need to be, as developers and testers, you need to be on the lookout for any changes that are happening in the market and target your different automation test cases against the new operating systems. Why? Because A, it's going to be very fast adopted by the end users, and B, it makes changes constantly to the security policies, to the UI and other features and functionality that you see on the operating systems. So test coverage is important, platform coverage and operating systems on the real devices with the different operating systems, beta, legacy, as well as latest are obviously critical. You must also, and Brian talked about testing the binary on real devices. I would just add to that, in real environment conditions, okay? People are using their smartphones today more than ever in different conditions, different carrier networks with multiple sensors, multiple applications running in the background. You need to test like the end users are using your app.
So as we move forward here, so when you bring it together, continuous testing of both functional and security capabilities in parallel, automated in the pipeline, is how you get to quality, right? And so what you're doing is you're eliminating the human element, which gives you both speed and variability. You're enabling the forking of testing. So Eran brought up great examples of different operating system versions, different device formats, right? I mean, imagine being a human and having to test all the different Android devices. I think there's something like 52 different user designs, as it were, for the file or the screen factor formats and so forth. So being able to automate as much of that as possible is now really possible with continuous testing. And what that basically does is collapses risk, right? So you've got security risk, which is, hey, I could be breached. You got functional risk, which is this feature doesn't work. Like if your shopping cart feature doesn't work, you're in trouble. You're not going to be generating revenue. And so when you can automate all of that in a continuous fashion, that's where you get to velocity. We find customers can take quarterly or semi-annual release cycles and collapse their release cycles into weeks or months. And they do that relatively quickly by shifting their standard and shifting their approach. Testing for security and functional at the same time is how you get velocity within the pipeline, right? So from your build, you can spawn both Perfecto and NowSecure in parallel at the same time to do your testing. Why wait? Why serialize it when you can do that? And all of this then means faster feedback loops. So imagine a world now where if you, let's say you build your app every day. So every day you do a build, your CI/CD passes the app binary to our testing frameworks. We go run the tests. By the time everybody goes to bed, the results of the automated tests are fed into tickets. And when the developers wake up the next morning, all the code they wrote yesterday was tested. And that means tomorrow or today, when they log in, they get whatever bugs are associated, be it security or functionality or integration, with the test they just did. So now you're really talking about faster feedback loops and compression of repair. Waiting until an app is built and you're in staging to do QA testing and doing security testing is kind of a nightmare. And so by doing this automation, right, you're building quality in as you go, right, which gives you speed and velocity through. You're also reducing your escape defect rate. So, and many of our customers are tracking that as a key thing, right? Last thing you want is bugs going out that you didn't catch, right? Bugs in the wild are bad for many, many different reasons. And so it's exciting to think about this as a way to move velocity within your organization. Eran, any thoughts to add here?
Oh, yeah. One important thing to add here is, again, just framing this conversation around mobile. The scope of mobile development and testing continuously grows, right? Just since iOS 14, Apple introduced the notion of app clips. Okay, now Google are working with APKs, and we are hearing the Flutter technology driving forward, and progressive web applications and foldables. So you can have the same native application, by the way, but a lot of things that are impacting the quality of the application are happening. Or there are a lot of advancements in the mobile technology that you want to actually leverage. And this is why when you're parallelizing your test cases and test executions, you're not just reducing the fast feedback loop and saving time, you're actually kind of addressing the growing scope of things. Because if you're just continuing to be linear in the approach of testing, the time is just going to consistently grow. You need to understand that with parallel testing, you can actually also address the complexity that comes on top of your existing mobile applications with all the new sensors and augmented reality, virtual reality. There are so many technologies that are being adopted these days on top of mobile applications that really adds more test scenarios. So the suites that you are running are growing every day. Okay, this is why parallel testing is important, not just to give you more coverage, but also to reduce the time and address this growing complexity.
Absolutely. And so as we think about where this goes, right? So what we're trying to do is help the business meet the business needs, which is the business needs mobile teams to deliver innovative capabilities quickly to their customers, right? And so whether it's, you're a retailer that suddenly has COVID happen and now you have to suddenly become a mobile remote delivery type of business, you're DoorDash, for example, whose business kind of exploded last year because of food delivery, or whatever else is in your business. Maybe you're a legacy business, sorry for that word, but you're a traditional brick and mortar business who really needs to go through digital transformation. All of this is how you get speed with quality built in throughout the life cycle, right? So the value we're all delivering as technical professionals is really business value associated with whatever the mission of the mobile app is, whether it's to engage customers, support issues, sell more product, book tickets, whatever those things are, right? That's why we're really here in order to enable those capabilities. We just don't want functional and security issues to get in the way, and hence the velocity is the focus. So why don't you tell us a story here? This is really interesting on a multi-level tiered testing strategy, Eran, if you'd like to cover this for us.
Of course. Thanks, Brian. And I think, to a previous slide, velocity and quality should not really fight one another. Velocity needs to be driven by quality, and quality can only be helping velocity by automation of everything that matters. So what the next slide was showing on top of this one is, this is taken from one of my customers. And what I love about this slide is actually a lot of things, regardless of the colors. this slide shows a nice pipeline of an existing enterprise customer on the mobile. He's testing a mobile application, and he has at least 7 concurrent pull requests a day. What this customer did, he implemented a process in which each pull request gets a 10-minute window, a 10-minute feedback loop, in which he's doing obviously regression testing, unit testing, API testing, whatever fits. And 10 minutes is obviously a very short amount of time. You cannot test on too many platforms. So he's testing on 1, maximum 2 devices, but he's targeting very, very specifically the code changes that he made just before he's merging the code into the master branch. These things happen 7 times a day, can be 2 or 3 times by the same developer or by 7 developers concurrently. And this leads to the 1-hour feedback. At noon, there is an automated trigger that builds the entire software with all the different pull requests that happened up until then. And regression cycle happens. And in an hour, you can actually accomplish much more than obviously 10 minutes, at least 6 times more. And here you're actually doing more parallel testing across more devices. You are adding more types of testing. It can be accessibility, can be more security, more performance, more functional and integration testing. But in 1 hour, you cannot really do everything. But what's the beauty about these 2 milestones or time slots within the day is that while you reach the end of the day, when you're doing a nightly regression, which takes about 7.5 to 8 hours, you already gain a lot of confidence and sometimes even trust in the test executions, because you had a few chances to validate your build before you're targeting the full-blown regression. And as you can see, the cubes, the green cubes on the slide, they are massive. Okay, in 8 hours with parallel testing, you can accomplish, and this customer is targeting 80% of the platforms that he sees in his own analytics. Okay, let's say every user agent, the top 80% user agents, devices, mobile devices, and sometimes browsers that are hitting the backend are being considered in the nightly regressions of these 8 hours. And obviously, this reduces the risks of escape defects. It gives confidence, and it's also able to find for this specific customer bugs in their test cases, so they can also eliminate noise coming from their test suite, making sure that their test suite is always stable and their pipeline is also stable.
Absolutely. So thanks for that in-depth story. So we want to spend a few minutes to kind of give you a flavor of what your world is like leveraging our tools to run in a continuous testing type mode. So I'm going to hand it over to Eran to talk a little more about his portfolio, and then we'll drill into tools in use.
Thanks again, Brian. So Perfecto, as I mentioned earlier, is a platform for continuous testing for web and mobile applications. What we are able to do, we have 3 layers in our architecture. The main one, or the foundation, is actually the middle one. It's the cloud-based test environment. This is where we provide as a SaaS offering real mobile devices, smartphones and tablets for iOS and Android across over 10 data centers. So we have global coverage of real mobile devices, and also mobile simulators and emulators, so virtual devices if you need them as a developer for early stage development activities. I'm not talking not just only on the testing, but you can use the virtual devices if you need for early development and even test development. But obviously the majority of testing happens on real devices. We also have desktop browsers, Chrome on Windows and on Mac and everything. So if you're doing a responsive web that runs on both web and mobile, you can also test on browsers. On top of that, we have the intelligent test creation. You can write tests in all the leading frameworks, Selenium, Appium, Espresso, XUI test. We also have scriptless or codeless solutions, and we have Quantum, which is a behavior-driven development framework for creation of test automation. At the end of the executions, we have an AI-driven reporting and analysis that allows customers to make sense, slice and dice test data to see what's going on in their entire pipeline, including CI dashboard. We can move to the next slide. Obviously, the mobile landscape is complex, and when you're adding the real environment conditions, you see that it's very, very hard to test, especially automate these unique business scenarios. So Perfecto can automate on top of Appium and the other frameworks very advanced scenarios. from biometrics like fingerprint and face recognition, location and image injection for barcode scanning or check deposit, work with Apple Wallet, work and test chatbots or voice assistant capabilities within a mobile application. All of this can be done on real devices. Okay. In the next slide, we're talking about, I love the animation, we're talking about the breadth of the lab. So we have, again, this is the lab in the cloud. You don't need to install anything, but you can see here that you can have either a public cloud or a private cloud dedicated to you with secure VPN connection across so many different platforms. You have the real devices, the iOS and the Android, the virtual devices, the emulators, and the desktop browsers, all accessible for both manual as well as automated testing. The next slide summarizes everything, because at the end of the execution, or as you create the test cases, you're using the standard mostly framework. So this is a snippet of an Appium script. You can write standard Appium scenarios or Espresso and XUI test, and you can simply specify the cloud URL, the security token, and whether you're testing on a real device, and you can specify which device you want to test against, or a virtual device if it's an emulator or a simulator, and it's going to deploy, install, and run everything for you in the cloud in parallel. The next slide, if I'm not mistaken, oh, that's the end. Okay, I didn't show you a slide on the reporting, but obviously everything that you execute goes to the reporting platform, which is aggregating everything that you are doing. Thank you, Brian.
Fantastic. And so we encourage you to ask us questions at the end. The Q&A is open. We've got a couple that have come in so far. Also, as a follow-up, if you want to get your hands on these, both of us, our companies are available to do full board demos and really show you how to use our tools on top of your apps. So like Perfecto, NowSecure is really focused on the mobile side of the house. Perfecto also supports non-mobile. But we've been working with hundreds of mutual mobile clients. And so NowSecure really brings a full suite solution to the table. So for continuous testing, that's our NowSecure platform, SaaS, cloud-based, click and run, upload and run, script and run autonomously in the background by plugging into your CI/CD infrastructure and so forth. We also have the pen tester kit that's well known as Workstation. There's, I think, 1,000 pen testers around the world that use NowSecure Workstation to deliver mobile pen tests. It's an interactive laptop type scenario. We also provide pen testing services and full board training and support. Our NowSecure courseware has been used to train some 3,000 to 4,000 developers and security professionals on how to write secure code and how to test code securely on a mobile specific perspective. And all of this is underpinned with over a decade worth of experience building really cool tech and amazing features and all that good stuff you can read under the waterline here. And so for the organizations who are here today, it's really straightforward. So with NowSecure, you simply upload a binary, we run the tests in the cloud, we give you an answer, right? For majority of customers, that means plugging it into their CI/CD infrastructure. So after Jenkins or something builds your app, Azure, DevOps, what have you, passes the binary, we run the test, battery of tests, get the results out in standardized formats and generate tickets into your ticketing system automatically. No human is needed in any of this. Now, depending on the kind of application, as Eran described using Appian for scripting, if you want to navigate certain parts of your application, you can use Appian scripts in order to navigate certain parts of your application. Maybe you want to test the security of a shopping cart token or something like that. And so, but in the background for continuous testing, for a lot of organizations, they use our default testing, which gives them massive coverage with zero configuration requirements in order to make it work. So as we kind of visualize this, as we talk about it, NowSecure for most customers just runs autonomously in the background. It's like a cardiac monitor in your development pipeline. You do the build, here's the Jenkins pipeline build being created. When the build is done, it's passed to our cloud. Coming out of it are tickets. You can see Jira tickets have been generated. There's some issues here around third-party keyboards, around iOS ATS, which is a network security protocol. Key size check. It's a combination of static and dynamic analysis that's actually occurring with IAST hooks under the hood and with API sec tests under the hood as well to give you that kind of full coverage. And as it comes all the way together, then what really happens is no humans logging in and doing anything. Instead, tickets are flowing to developers, and these tickets have embedded assistance in them to really speed that remediation. We have a number of organizations that start with us on the can you meet a build, test, and deploy cycle of 90 minutes? And we're like, yes, but can you actually fix the bugs we find in that 90 minutes? And so we've done a lot of work to not just make sure we have highly accurate findings that find real security issues, but also to make sure that the developers get the remediation materials they need and the remediation assistance in an automated way in order to fix the issues. So here's a great example. I've got a ticket that's got password exposed, modifiable over the network. If something like that happens, you're in trouble. You violated just about every compliance and regulatory standard there is. Obviously, nobody wants to have that happen. For your developers, there's some basic explanation of how to reproduce and all the instances of this occurrence. I think there are 7 or 8 instances of the same API call being made in multiple places in the application. So we detected and gave validation of it. And then there's remediation instructions. So here's how to fix it. And they're written for a hybrid developer security world. So if you're a developer, you should know at least a little bit of security. So you should understand the security words in it. But to help you out, it includes things like code samples and links back to Apple and Google documentation on how to securely write this kind of code. So we have our code examples, you get their code examples, you get our description of how to fix it, you get their descriptions of how to fix it. And the whole idea is, I want to know where the issues are, what the priority is, and how to fix them fast. And I want them to be authentic. I want them to be accurate. I don't want false positives. And that's what we're really doing with embedded assistance in order to speed the testing process, which in turn speeds the release process. So we'd like to tell you some stories about our customers. So let's talk about a customer or two from Perfecto, Eran. Over to you.
Of course. I would say something that actually is relevant for all these example customers, and this is the scale. Okay, you see, we have customers that are running 60,000 automated test cases on a month. I have actually a customer who is running over 1 million test executions across different frameworks for his mobile application across during one quarter. 1 million test executions a quarter, and he has over 93% pass rate. This is quality and velocity being managed by a single customer with a single pipeline. And I think this is how good looks like. This is where we want to be, in every given time. And especially in mobile, it's very easy, to be in a good place of, robust automation and robust, test coverage and even good rating. But, you just need a new version of the app or a new version of the operating systems that can easily break your activities. So this is where continuous testing and these customers that are on the screen are leveraging continuous testing with Perfecto to really see high degree of test automation, but also high degree or high passing rates of the test automation executions.
So would like to, by the way, we're getting some more great questions. So I will again encourage people to use the Q&A to ask us questions as I see them coming in. We work with a lot of different regulated industries and non-regulated ones. And I'd like to tell the story of Caribou Coffee. I think that may fit some of you here. If you buy coffee, depending on where you are in the world, you might be into Peet's, you might be into Starbucks, you might be into Caribou Coffee. I think a lot of us know that Starbucks was a real innovator around mobile ordering, and you walk in and you pick up your coffee kind of scenario. And then I think they partnered with Uber Eats to get your coffee delivered. Well, Caribou Coffee has been more like a bookshop coffee, come sit, read your coffee, hang out in the shop, and more like a neighborhood coffee house. When COVID hit, that was a real challenge because suddenly it wasn't hang out in the coffee house. And so they needed to move very quickly. And at that point, they had a slow quarterly release cycle, and the business demanded faster innovation. So leveraging NowSecure technology and training services, they were able to accelerate. And in less than 6 months, they collapsed the release frequency from quarterly to monthly, and they're on a path to weekly or biweekly. And that's all through this strategy of continuous testing in the pipeline. The training for the developers and security team made them smarter. The continuous testing verified that they were, in fact, writing secure code, which reduced escape defects and sped up the pipeline, which is fantastic. So to summarize it all, Eran, I'll let you go first. What are your key takeaways as we think about continuous testing?
So I think we have here a few check boxes or check marks that I see as best practices for my customers. And I've been in the mobile industry for over 21 years now. So I've seen a lot of good practices, also bad practices. And also this kind of addresses a few of the questions that I've seen flying in. So thank you again for asking these great questions. But obviously, shift left, not just the functional testing or the easy to shift left testing, shifting security, accessibility, performance, all these things that sometimes from convenience or because it's sometimes too complicated or whatever, you need to shift left and get a mix of all testing types as early as possible for fast feedback, early remediation of bugs, and obviously, if you can automate them, it's not really costing you anything. You just click on a button, trigger them through your Jenkins, and get the results. Obviously, proper testing frameworks. This is around the skill set, okay? If you do not use the right test automation frameworks, and there is a huge choice out there, I know, you need to make sure that your skill set within the organization, the test automation scenarios that you're aiming to automate can really be automated and maintained by the testing frameworks that you select. If they can't, you don't need to push hard. You just need to switch, swap. There are many open source and commercial frameworks out there. You need to pick it from the get-go and make sure that it meets your requirements. Obviously, the mix of real devices with the lean towards real devices, of course, is key for success. Keeping up with the market, okay? Things are changing every month. Make sure that your lab and your developers are up to date with all the changes and requirements, and look at the reports. In my mind, this is one of the most impactful changes or best practice for continuous testing. Look at what you see in the dashboard. If you have broken builds, if you see test cases that takes too long, if you see flakiness, if you see a framework or a platform that keeps making noise, act upon it, look at the results, act upon them. And we talked earlier, Brian, about the parallel testing. It applies to everything. You need to have automation, but you need to scale it. And parallel testing gives you a lot of the benefits that I mentioned earlier.
Absolutely. And when we think about the security side, right, many of the same things apply. A couple of key things to think about. The first one is there are plenty of security standards you can use. Achieve an agreement, set the policy, leveraging a standard, either 100% or fine tune it for your organization, right? Whether you go to OWASP or NIAP or IOXT or what have you, right? Pick a standard, establish that, and pick a standard in a way that enables continuous security. Oh, these things are automatable. We'll put them in our continuous security testing standard. These things are not. We'll put it in our pen testing requirements for more severe risk applications. And then leveraging the autonomous testing and doing that on a continuous basis, like a monitoring system on your pipeline, is really key to moving the velocity, right? It's much better to collect the security bugs as you go and get them fixed as you go. There's an interesting question about embedded assistance, and I'll go ahead and answer it now, which is you need to train people up front. Don't just agree on standards up front. Make sure your developers know how to write secure code. Our NowSecure Academy will teach your developers how to write secure code. Includes tips and tricks and all the other stuff. And so you can train them before they ever write a line of code. Now, odds are pretty good you already have code being written, so let's get them some training to help them out through a series of modules and experts. And that will help them write more secure code. If they write it securely up front, then there's fewer things to find and fewer things to fix. Now, for the times they do get a bug, it may be fat fingering and they just type something incorrectly. It could be lack of knowledge. So the remediation assistance speeds their way through it, but also gives them links to go back and watch the video they might have missed and all the rest. So finally, for those of you who are security purists, I date back to BlackBerry when everything was industrial strength security. The reality is that for most applications, continuous security testing is enough. But there are high-risk applications that may have certain kinds of PII or very sensitive financial transactions. And so leverage pen testing periodically as necessary for those things that you can't automate. But try to build your continuous security testing strategy and policy to automate as much as possible of what matters, which then minimizes the amount of manual work that might still slow you down. So thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed the continuous testing. We got lots of resources. I'll talk about mine, hand it over to Eran on his. So there's links here. There's everything from how to set up a pipeline for mobile DevSecOps to 110 pages of secure mobile development best practices to what are the top 5 security vulnerabilities and how to write code to prevent them. So the infographic on the right is one of our more popular assets. If you want to come back and forth and stay up to speed, we have a bi-weekly newsletter with lots of tips and tricks in it as well. So you'll get these links and have access to these documents after this event. And how about from Perfecto there, Eran?
So complementing the security testing with functional and sometimes even non-functional, we have a few resources. We have the complete guide for mobile automated testing, how to get started with automation, what to keep in mind specifically to mobile test creation, the quarterly digital test coverage index, showing which devices, smartphones, tablets, and browsers are most popular across the top 10 countries, geographies. It's a free asset. You can see which devices you should be testing on if you are targeting Germany or Canada or other countries. And last is the latest state of test automation survey that we are conducting, and this is the latest edition. And by the way, as Brian mentioned earlier in this webinar, this is where we are pulling a lot of the stats in the market, showing if the market is kind of growing or steady, etc. So these are the three resources that we can give you from this webinar.
Absolutely. So we got more questions piling in. So before we get to questions, we're going to have some fun and give away some goodies, as is the tradition with the DevSecOps bunch today. So we have 2 questions we're going to ask. Now, in order to win the prize, you are going to answer in the chat, right? So we're going to ask you questions that have numeric answers. Put the numeric answer in the chat. The first 3 people who answer in the chat successfully will win a prize from Perfecto. And again, that's books and a box of goodies with all kinds of really cool swag. And then the same thing after I ask the Perfecto question, I'll ask the NowSecure question. Again, the first 3 people that answer correctly in the chat will also win. I will pause after asking the first question, get your answers in fast, and I will name them for Kelly, and she can keep me honest to make sure I pick the right first 3 people. Now, again, we said this was numbers to remember, so if you're lucky, you screenshotted all the slides that had numbers on them. So make sure I ask the question correctly. So first question is, what percentage of organizations are able to automate 75% of their test cases? What percentage of organizations can automate 75% of their test cases? We have 1, 2, and 3. So Michael, Mike, and Ken. Michael, Mike, and Ken. All good, Kelly? Michael, Mike, and Ken. We'll go through the chat afterwards. So that was very good. Thank you for remembering, knowing, and I really seriously hope that you become one of the higher than 9% who can automate the majority of your test cases. That's our goal today with continuous security testing. All right, here comes the second question. So this comes from NowSecure. What percentage of mobile apps in the App Store have security vulnerabilities? What percentage of mobile apps in the App Store have security vulnerabilities? Okay, wow, they're coming fast. I got to go back here. So the answer is 85%. So I'm trying to find the first one.
Amir was the first one.
Is it Amir? So Amir is the first one, and then Ken, and then Mike G. Amir, Ken, and Mike G. So enjoy your goodie boxes, have fun, drink well, read well, all that good stuff. Thank you for hanging out and remembering the numbers today, and we hope that you will be able to improve your world as well. And with all of that, we're going to go into Q&A, so bear with me as I work my way through as many of these as we can. I'm going to go all the way back up to the top and try to go through these as they happen. So first questions. Actually, this is interesting. Eran, maybe you'll want to take this first. So to increase the speed of delivery, would it be preferable to focus on a lean testing approach using risk-based testing combined with functional and or decision conditional test coverage as a threshold? Wow. Did you catch all that?
Yeah, that's a complicated question, but I think, testing is always risk-based, okay? It's not that you need to change anything, because today everything that we do, even if it's not lean or whatever, we're taking risks because we have a limit to what we can actually test per each version, and we are bounded by time, okay? Let's say you have a week of testing, depending on the maturity of your organization. You in any case are limited in what you can accomplish for a specific build, and you're taking risks. With mobile specifically, you can take risks on coverage, on platforms, but this risk needs to be very, very strategic and needs to be data-driven, okay? If you're not really acting on data, these risks are, as good as anyone else would take them. So you need to look at your backend, analytics, see what's going on in your analytics, in your App Store, in your Jira, okay? And based on that data, this is just a subset, of course, make the decisions. Look at what happened, what was changed from one build to the next. And again, data is my main keyword here. Risk and data go together. You can only make smart decisions if you're applying the data element inside your calculation.
And I'm simply going to say ditto for security to make it easy to move to the next question. So let data be your driver of your strategy. So next one, I love this one. So for those of you who joined us in January with Contrast Security, we talked about observability. This question is, I'll start it and see if you'd like to add. Wouldn't testing continue post-deployment with observability monitors? This would help cover gaps in test coverage and or quickly find escape defects, I would think. Observability is an emerging strategy. We very much believe in that strategy for both security and functionality. The idea of observability is through the development lifecycle and through production, you're actually monitoring for bad events, right? So when you write your application in a way that it can be instrumented in production and therefore throw off error events, security events, and things like that, you create an observable application that in turn you can catch things that you missed. And so the key to observability is not buying a technology. The key is in your application architecture and your API strategy of what data you're going to collect and harvest, kind of like the last question, and then making that available so that you can find issues along the way. Eran, anything to add to the observability question about post-deployment?
Only one small thing. Even if you're not doing, and I like real user monitoring and instrumenting the app so you can actually observe data coming from production, you also need to have kind of what we call synthetic monitoring that can help you understand, in a proactive way, if you're doing, you're taking a subset of your regression test cases and you are running them against the production data, the production application version, it can also trigger some real-time issues that you're sometimes not aware of. So I would say the 80% of your observability needs to come from what Brian was saying. You can complement that if you need or want, and I have customers that are actually doing it with production or testing in production in a synthetic environment. So it's also something that you can do.
Absolutely. So next one's coming your way as well. So this one's also a good one. Would it be better to perform functional checks locally or as part of a build and limit the live integration or end-to-end testing checks to your smoke test suite? So basically, what do you test when? And I think your picture of your story from a customer was really going that direction, wasn't it?
Exactly. And that's kind of the shift left. If you can automate as much as you can automate and put, run it as part of your build, obviously will benefit you more towards the right end of the pipeline prior to releasing. So it all comes to parallel testing, automation coverage, stability of the automation, and shifting it, of course, left to the build process.
Absolutely. So I think there's time for two more. So first one has to do with if you live in the Apple world, you're living this with a shift from Objective-C to Swift and the many versions of Swift. Yes. How easy is it to get started with your application to learn and test with your solution? If you want to say functional, and then I'll jump to the other side and talk about security testing on that. So evolution of languages coming from Apple from Objective-C to Swift. How easy is it to migrate from one to the other?
So I would say actually what I see in the market today, it shouldn't be that complex. But again, you are changing the application architecture or the language that you are writing the application that often. And I would say that what I'm seeing is not the challenges that I'm seeing are not around the differences between the Swift or the shift from Objective-C to Swift. I actually see a lot of challenges actually moving from the native languages like Swift and Objective-C to actually Flutter or progressive web. Organizations are shifting not from one version of Swift to the other. Obviously they are, but that's not the majority of the challenge. The big challenge is when you're completely revamping the application and moving to Dart, let's say, which is Flutter based. So at the end of the day, it's all about skill set within your developers, and developers are skilled. You just need to make time. You need to allocate time within or between each user stories to accommodate for these changes. Because I can tell you that from Perfecto standpoint, we leave buffer in the schedule for any new operating system that we need to support, any new smartphones, because they happen. Things like a new version of Swift or whatever. This is part of the ongoing things that happen. You just need to allocate time, and skilled developers would not be impacted if you leave them the right time to really adjust and accommodate to these changes.
Got it. And I think we have time for one more. I'll go ahead and grab this one. So a question was here about embedded assistance. Well, shouldn't you be training developers beforehand? I think I kind of said this earlier, right? Which is yes, ideally your process should be teaching your developers how to write high quality code, whether it's teaching them security skills or teaching them the functional skills that are necessary to write high quality code. That's why our more aggressive customers combine training with software, proactively train, and then use the software to verify. We call it trust but verify. And so, with that, we appreciate everyone asking questions. There are a few more there. So through our companies, we will make sure the others who asked a few more questions will get those answered. Again, this is our 5th DevSecOps bunch. It was so exciting to have Eran here to talk continuous testing, which is something we both believe in. If you haven't tried it, you really should look into it. If you're deep into the corners of the edge cases of functional and security testing, we encourage you to instead look in the center. And the center is where you'll find continuous automation, and that's how you get continuous security for higher quality apps with a lot of speed. So Eran, would you like to say some parting words as we wind down here?
I just want to say thank you to the entire audience for the engagement, for the questions. Thank you, Brian and NowSecure, for having me in this great webinar. I hope everyone enjoyed the content, and I actually look forward for the 3rd webinar. I'm already thinking about the next topic for us, Brian.
Yeah, continuous testing with bots, and we're drinking on a beach, right? So wish everybody a good day. As we said, we will share slides and recording within a few days. Contact either company and you'll get contact information if you want to learn more about our solutions. Thanks again, everyone. Goodbye now.